Anna Pelliccioli. She works at the Novartis Institutes for BioMedical Research, IT department in Basel, as a scientific data manager. Her background is in chemistry, however, she's been in research IT for 9 years. First at Syngenta and then Novartis since 2009. Her expertise are research databases and reporting of scientific data, and she's currently leading a project that aims to replace IJC software, which is no longer supported at NIBR, with alternative tools, many of which are provided by us, ChemAxon.
Thank you. IJC software is something that has been around at NIBR and Novartis for a very long time. Most chemists know how to use it. Many of them have become really good at it. They know all the features. They have learned the PL script language to extend the functionality, create their own little applications. It's something that's really well established. And in spite of this, we have decided at NIBR that we want to move away from these tools and replace them with something which is more modern. And my talk is going to show you why we want to do this and how we are going about this. When we started with this idea about 1.5 years ago, this is what we were using. We had the direct cartridge to do chemistry searches in Oracle. Then we were using IJC Draw to draw structures, IJC Space for personal structure reaction databases. We had built our own IJC Space, IJC Host application that we called Ceres, which provides access to a series of remote databases, the most important of which are our historical collection of chemical reactions, the ACD catalog, a large screening sample database, and there's several more in there. And finally, we had IJC for Excel to show structures in spreadsheets. Next to these tools, we also had the Cambridge Soft, now PerkinElmer, ELN, and the ChemOffice suite. Looking at this situation, there were a few things we weren't satisfied with. For one thing, we saw we had some duplication of functionality, and the obvious one there is that IJC Draw and ChemDraw do basically the same thing. Some systems were using IJC Draw, and for some other system, people need to draw in ChemDraw, and that wasn't very efficient because every chemist needed to learn both. Then there were some issues with ELN search. So even now, it's not possible in our environment to do a substructure search inside the ELN, and that's something chemists have been complaining for a long time. And finally, we found out that IJC software was no longer supported by its vendor. So that was actually the reason why we decided to change and to move to something different, because we didn't want to run into the situation where our application stopped working and there was really nothing we could do about it. We didn't want to get stuck. Before we actually started replacing IJC, there had already been an initiative on NIBR to look into alternative chemistry cartridges, because we actually didn't just have the direct cartridge, we had 2 other cartridges. And we wanted to try and see if we could find one single cartridge to replace all of these so that we could ease maintenance, make it simpler, and also improve on the consistency across the applications. And the result of that effort, of that evaluation, was that we decided to go for the JChem cartridge. So that happened at the beginning of last year, and that's how we actually started our collaboration with ChemAxon. Now, going back to our IJC problem, we saw that replacement for some parts of it were, we had some obvious choices. So we already said, we already had ChemDraw, so we could easily replace IJC Draw with ChemDraw. And as part of the Cambridge suite, we also had ChemDraw for Excel, so we could use that instead. So we started pointing chemists to those tools and asked them to try them out and try to move into that direction. We weren't really sure what to do about IJC at first, so since we had just purchased the cartridge and we had a good experience, we were having a good experience with that, we thought we'd just talk to ChemAxon and see if they could help us in that space. So We had some discussions, and Alex and Metzi came over. We discussed this thing, and we decided that we were going to try Instant JChem. Before going to the evaluation, this is NIBR, and it's just to show you, it's spread across the globe in all these different sites. And we first decided we needed to do some homework to find out who was actually still using the software and where, to make sure we could cover everybody's requirements. So we have a way to track who has installed which software. And we saw that this is where the users were. And we had in total about 1,600 scientists who had used ICES software or had installed ICES software. They were spread a bit everywhere, mostly in Basel, but there were quite a few also in other sites. So it was clear we needed to approach this as a global project, involve a little bit everybody. What we decided to do is to create a small group of users representing different sites and introduce them to Instant JChem. So we gave them the software, we gave them an introduction to the software, and we asked them to test it. They were actually asked to try to do the same thing they were doing in ICES inside Instant JChem. We collected a list of these things they were trying to do, just really compiled a list of use cases, and against each of these we checked how well Instant JChem performed. While the scientists were mainly using this as a tool for local databases, we also wanted to test how well IJC works as an interface to Oracle databases. So as part of this evaluation, we also set up IJC to connect to a large 10 million structure database where we installed the JChem Cartridge to check that the searching such a large database worked well too. This happened last year. We started at the beginning of June and went over the summer with this evaluation. And when around October time, we decided to get together chemists again and make a decision. Can we go for Instant JChem or not? And the result was really positive, and turned out the chemists really liked it. They thought IJC was a valid replacement for ICES space. They could do pretty much everything they had been doing in ICES there. Things they liked the most were fast data import, so it was really quick to import also large SD files, fast structure search. Form creation was particularly nice, much easier than ICES. And the exercise of connecting IJC to the Oracle database worked really well too. So it was a go. We decided to go for it. And still, we found a few features that we thought were missing, and we pointed out to ChemAxon which features were missing for us and requested that they put it into their list in the future development. What we thought needed improvement was the ability to export a subset of data into a local database. So what people like to do is to do a search in ICES, and then when they have the result, they export into a small ICES database, local database, that they're sent to colleagues. You cannot do that in IJC at the moment. We also lacked support for working on development, test, production environments at the same time, moving a product from a development environment to the test to the production, so that you can deploy one version on production and then start working on the next version in development without disrupting the productive version for the users. Then there were a few other things about RDF export, but that's already been fixed actually. And finally, people thought that the way you import new data into IJC is less flexible than ICES. ICES really gives a lot of options there. If you want to merge data, add data, overwrite data, that sort of stuff. But like I said, the overall experience with this was really positive, and ChemAxon was great. So thanks for this. It was really nice to work together, very responsive. So that all went really well. Now, once we decided we wanted to go for IJC, we started planning the rollout. We needed to decide how to give it to users, how to deploy it, and the choice was to use the Java Web Start deployment. because this is really easy. You put your software on the server, send people a URL. All they have to do, they have to click on that URL, and they download the latest version. If there's a new version coming up, then they don't have to do anything. The next time they open IJC, they automatically get the new version. We decided to create a dedicated Oracle instance to host shared projects. This way, we're giving users the choice of either creating a local database or a shared database. Local database makes sense, of course, it's just some data that a person wants to keep for personal use. Shared database is it's a very good choice when it's a whole project team or a whole lab that is sharing project data or a lab inventory, for example, because they can collaborate really well using that. Right, so when we prepared all that, we ran a survey to find out how people were using ISIS, and that helped us to plan the training. We got about 10% of people who responded to the survey, and they told us a little bit how they use ISIS currently. 1st of February this year, we went live, and so we sent everybody the email saying that IJC is available, and we also started with the training. So how do you migrate a personal database from Instant JChem to IJC? What you have to do, you have to first export data, either as a RD file or SD file, then choose between a local or shared database, as I was explaining before. Set up a project in IJC, import the data, create forms. Now, we are trying to help users do that by organizing workshops. So what they do, they come with their laptop, with their own database. We have 2 or 3 hour workshop where they work with their own things, their own data. We help them export, create a project, import into IJC, make forms. And that's been working really well, at least for the chemists who show up at the workshop. We also created documentation for them, step-by-step instruction, that sort of thing. What do you do if depending on what you want to do? Try to make it as simple and linear as possible. And we also made some short videos to complement the videos that are already on the ChemAxon website with really simple step-by-step instruction how to do, how to perform the simplest tasks. Now, I mentioned before, we have this application called Ceres, which is an ISIS host application that provides access to a whole lot of remote databases. And in this case, we went through the list of databases. First of all, reevaluating, do we still need this database or not? And if we do, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to do this in the future? Now, it turns out that we can actually cover most of this with Instant JChem. So ACD catalog is going to be available through Instant JChem, for example. And our screening sample database too. We decided to cancel subscriptions to a couple of databases that weren't used anymore. For some of the database, we're not sure what to do yet. For example, the metabolite database is a database which our users really want to keep, but there's no there's no RD file available from the company that sells it, so we're not sure what to do about that one. Same thing for current chemical reactions. And finally, what's really important for us is our historical collection of reactions. And there, while talking to ChemAxon about how to go about migrating that one, they suggested that instead of using IJC, they would develop a web application for us. So that's what's going on right now. We're currently developing this, and Greg's talk tomorrow is going to be all about this, so I'm not going to say more right now. So to wrap up the rollout of IJC, we are doing the rollout since February. It's going quite well. We're trying to use the possibility to store data in Oracle as much as possible, trying to persuade users that it's much better to put data in Oracle compared to on some private database on some shared drive that nobody knows about. And scientists at the moment are still allowed to use ISIS. We still have licenses, but they know that it can use it until it breaks, and at some point they'll have to move to IJC. Finally, the most difficult thing in all of this is being not the technology, which has been working great so far, but it's just getting people to read the email and know that there's this new software around, and they should migrate from ICES to IJC and come to the workshops. And that's the thing that's really difficult to do in a large organization like ours, and I have to say we're still struggling with that one. Then if we have a second, I wanted to show you that besides replacing ICES space, we're also thinking of using IJC for other nice things. So one of these is accessing our data warehouse. We have a new data warehouse that we currently can query using a web application we call Dart. Dart allows you to put together queries, define the query, define the fields you want to display, and show the data in a spreadsheet format. But it doesn't have forms. So instead of duplicating all that nice functionality that's already in IJC in Dart, we thought it would be a good idea to use IJC to do that. So if people want to have a form view of the data, they could use IJC instead. Dart accesses the data warehouse through a service layer. So what we're trying to do with IJC now, and we're developing this while we're speaking, and that Instant JChem could reuse the query definition and the fields, the views defined in Dart, and with that go to the services, retrieve the data, and store them in a local Derby database. Once the data is there, then IJC works as usual. You can then make forms, and these forms can then also be refreshed. So we are going to build in a refresh mechanism too. From that point on, actually, it will work for people just like IJC usually works. One last thing we are going to develop is the integration of Instant JChem with our chemical properties calculation framework. So we have this framework that where we can publish models for calculations, and these models are accessible via services. This is already being used by other tools, for example, Spotfire and Focus. So we want to make these calculations accessible to IJC too. And the reason we are doing this way instead of using ChemAxon's calculator plugins is that this way we can guarantee consistency across applications, because all the different tools are going to use the same methods to calculate the various chemical properties. Right, just to wrap up, most functionality that was provided by ICES in this past is now being replaced with IJC within NIBR. We did some customization work. I forgot to mention that before. That was something that was necessary so that we could integrate IJC with our security framework. So authentication authorization was programmed for us by ChemAxon as an extra security module. They are now currently doing this web application for us, and you'll hear about that from Greg tomorrow. And finally, with those two last examples, we'd like to say that IJC is really a versatile tool, and besides replacing ICES, you can do other really interesting things with it. That's all. I'd like to thank everybody who participated in this. We're still working on this. So that's all the chemists who evaluated IJC for us, NIBR IT staff who supported various phases of this project. Manuel is now developing the modules, Greg for his support. And then ChemAxon, Alex Medzi came over many times to talk things over with us. So developed the security module. And then Tim, who's always been really, really helpful, has come over many times and knows everything about IJC. And thank you for your attention.
Do you have any idea if one could integrate in the documentation or guides or automatic guides or something in software, so the learning process to access the IJC, how that would be easier for someone that do not want to spend time on learning the software in detail?
How you would integrate?
Yeah, I mean, you know, from other software types, Office package or something like that. There's a guide, something that you can show tips and so on. Would that be possible to integrate that?
We haven't looked into that yet. What we have a SharePoint site we trying to point people to, where we had we put up some what we call quick guides. It's so guides you can print out, and they have step-by-step instructions on things like how I export an SD file from ISIS, how I export an RD file from ISIS, how I import this into IJC. We tried to take ChemAxon documentation and strip out everything that was that was not really strictly necessary, so that I don't have to do that much reading, but it's really like do this, do this, do this, do this, and then they seem to like that. And also we have some videos we made with the same approach, really task-oriented. So how do I create a project? How do I import an SD file? That's what we have. I don't know how successful we're being with that. I think those things are really useful once they've come to the workshop and they've heard the whole story, how to do it, and then they want to remind themselves, well, how was it that I import an SD file and I go there, and that's useful in that case. But just to learn from zero, I'm not sure. There's a couple of people who've done that, but it's mostly computational chemists who are really a little bit more maybe familiar with different soft tools, and they like to do that type of stuff. So.
You mentioned you had 1,600 total users. Mm-hmm. How many simultaneous users do you have, and is there a performance degradation?
Oh, that 1,600 is ISIS users.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the thing is, we can track who's using the ISIS host databases. It's not that many simultaneous users, but we've never had performance problems with ISIS. The problem is a lot of them have just local databases. So we really need to go ask them, what are you doing with it? And are you still using it? And yeah.
With regards to our main data warehouse, which is where the ChemAxon cartridge is running, that's a new installation, and people are just starting to use it, so we don't have historical data on that.
That's where
we're collecting the information now.
Yep. Good.
Yeah.
I can shout. Have you rolled it outside of Europe yet?
Yeah, it's global.
It is global.
Yeah, it's been given to everybody. So we have people who have started using it in Cambridge, in Emerville, in Shanghai, Singapore.
But it's mostly local databases we're using.
That's mostly local databases, yeah. We aren't that far yet with offering, for example, ACD as a shared database. So, and also the integration with the data warehouse is not ready yet. So once we have that, I think we'll have more users. ACD, for example, is something they're really keen on having.